So yeah, we're live now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dhwani Mehta. I'm a co-founder of the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, and I'm delighted to welcome you today to the Kotak Karma Vidhi Inclusive Education Program webinar. Our webinar today is titled Towards a Framework for Inclusive Education in India, the Right to Education of Children with Disabilities During a Pandemic and Beyond. Just a few housekeeping points before we begin. We were overwhelmed by the response to the webinar, and unfortunately, we don't have the capability on Zoom for more than 100 attendees. So we are also live streaming the webinar on YouTube. So if you know of people who are unable to join us at the moment on Zoom, please share the YouTube link with them. We're about to post that in our chat box any minute now, and we'll also post it on Vidhi's social media accounts. We're also very grateful that we have two sign language interpreters on board today, Ananta Jain and Shivoy Sharma. Their videos should appear on your screen. Shivoy will be beginning today. And if you click on their videos, there'll be an option to pin the video, which will ensure that they remain on your screen even when the other panelists speak. One of the other speakers today is also going to be using a screen sharing option to make a presentation. So we will simultaneously post a Google Drive link to the presentation so that those who might not be able to read the screen sharing option can access this. And the same goes for the poster that's currently the backdrop for the webinar as well. If you'd like to tweet about the webinar, then please do tag Vidhi. Our handle is @Vidhi_India. Just a few words about Vidhi and the Inclusive Education Program. We are an independent think tank based in Delhi and Bangalore. We do legal research to make better laws and improve governance for the public good. The Kotak Karma Vidhi Inclusive Education Program is supported by the Kotak Mahindra Bank, and it aims to make the right to education meaningful for children from vulnerable groups. So we hope to conduct collaborative and consultative research and to draw attention to legal and policy gaps in the delivery of inclusive education in India, and to create greater awareness of these issues amongst relevant stakeholders, be it government, civil society organizations, teachers, and educators. So our first research project focused on the implementation of the right to education for children with disabilities, and this is the focus of our webinar today, along with a discussion on the challenges that inclusive education presents in these changed times. I'm very grateful to have the panelists who've agreed to join us today for this discussion. So during the course of the next hour and a half, we'll be hearing from Rahul Bajaj, a lawyer and MPhil candidate at the University of Oxford, who's kindly peer-reviewed Vidhi's research. Akanksha Tyagi, who's a mentor educator at the Department of Education with the government in Delhi, and who will give us practical insights. Deepti Gobbi, who's the head of education at the Jai Vakil Foundation in Mumbai, which has a very long history of working with children with intellectual disabilities. And Arman Ali, the executive director of the National Center for Promotion of Employment of Disabled People, which has been at the forefront of advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. I'm also delighted that we have Radio Udan on board as our media partner. So we're going to begin today's webinar with a presentation on Vidhi's report. The report is titled Towards an Inclusive Education Framework for India, an analysis of the rights of children with disabilities and the Right to Education Act. You can access the report on our website, and we're also posting a link at the moment in the chat box to enable you to look at it during the course of the webinar. So my colleague Shreya Srivastav, who's a co-author of the report, will be presenting our key findings. And this will be followed by a moderated discussion with the panelists, which will be led by the other co-authors of the report, Priyanka Rao and Tanushri Sarkar, as well as Pooja Pandey and Naina Seth, who are currently fellows with the Kotak Karma Vidhi Inclusive Education Program. We'll end the session with a brief question and answer session. If you haven't sent your questions in already, please feel free to post them during the course of the webinar. We apologize in advance if we aren't able to address everyone's questions today. We're trying hard to stick to the schedule. And if your questions aren't answered, please feel free to write into us at any of the email addresses that we will again post in the chat, and we will get back to you. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Shreya. And a last housekeeping point, a recording of this webinar should also be available on our YouTube channel as well as through our other social media accounts. Over to you, Shreya.
Shreya, we can't hear you.
No, you're not audible, Shreya.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Sorry for Hello everyone, and it's a pleasure to have you all today here for this discussion. So I'll quickly share my screen to discuss the report with you all. Um,
Just increase your audio a little bit, Shreya.
yes, sure. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So I would request Naina to stop sharing the screen so that I can start sharing my screen because it only allows one person to start. Yeah, thank you. So giving you a little background about the report, how it was started, and the journey of this report, I would like to bring your attention to one of the orders of the Supreme Court in Rajneesh Kumar Pandey and others versus Union of India. And Vidhi decided to intervene in this matter because one of the orders in this case was really problematic. So as you could see on the screen, the court said that children with disabilities or children with special needs cannot be imparted education same in the similar settings as children without disabilities. And they said that uh, the RPWD Act refers to the disabilities as physical disabilities, and not children with not all sorts of disabilities can be educated in similar settings. So Vidhi decided to intervene in this matter, thinking that the current legal framework suggests otherwise. And while the course of this exercise, we realized that the current framework related to inclusive education in India is really unclear and is contradictory. As in, there are different sets of legislations, and these legislations are not talking to each other. And also the different authorities that are responsible to implement inclusive education. So taking back to the recognition of right to education in India, it was recognized in 2002, and later the RT Act was RT Act was enacted to implement the right to education. But the RT Act did not include children with disabilities till 2012, and only after that children with disabilities were recognized as under the category of disadvantaged groups, and the benefits that are given to disadvantaged groups were directed to children with disabilities. But parallelly, the disability rights framework in India was also evolving, and the Right of Persons with Disability Act 2016 was enacted, which was a positive step towards inclusive education as it gave statutory backing to inclusive education in India. However, the RT Act still lacks upgradation, and it hasn't come in line with the new RPWD Act, and it still alludes to the older 1995 Act, which was called the Persons with Disabilities Law. And it still follows the model of integration, which was followed by the 1995 Act, as compared to the model of inclusion. So model of integration is where the you expect the child to adjust according to the system as compared to the system making adjustment according to the child's needs. So now the current framework asks you to, while make changes according to the needs of children with disabilities, the RT Act is still not updated to do so. So we decided to first look at some of the legal loopholes that are there in the current legal framework, and which focused on the inadequacies of the RT Act in providing right to inclusive education. And these like some of the inadequacies include not defining the term inclusive education, not even using the term inclusive education in the entire act, and not making right to education to be inclusive for children with disabilities. It also, within the schedule of the RT Act, it gives certain mandates for the private schools to fulfill in order to be recognized under the RT Act. However, these components of the schedule do not address the needs of children with disabilities and are inadequate in accommodating their needs. So even this needs to be updated. Later, we also focused on the contradictions between the RTE Act and the RPWD Act, and how both of them follow different approaches towards inclusive education. We also looked at the regulation of special schools and how they can be understood in the inclusive education framework. Another point that we focused on was how the different ministries or the two different authorities that are responsible for the implementation of inclusive education, that are the Ministry of Human Resource Development and the Ministry of Social Justice Empowerment, are not talking to each other, and there's lack of coordination between the two. And another last point that we focused on was the complexities in the implementation mechanism for inclusive education. However, while we were looking at the legal analysis of this, we realized that it's important to go beyond the text of the law. And this helped us to focus on the on-ground research, and we decided to speak to different stakeholders. We thought that it's important to understand how this is being implemented on ground and what are the challenges that these stakeholders are facing while implementing inclusive education. And in fact, we were surprised to see that how there is a lack of understanding regarding inclusive education across regions. And this led to this exploratory case study, that the design that we followed, and where we try to understand how they look at inclusive education as given under the RPWD Act and as it should be implemented under the RT Act as well. So these were some of the research questions that we focused on related to identification, certification, school choice of parents, that regarding the various school models that are available to children with disabilities, and are they actually giving a choice to parents, or they are just a choice on paper? This is, we tried to explore that as well. We tried to look at the infrastructure and the barrier-free requirements that are that should be there. We looked at the classroom environment and teacher strategies that are followed while providing education to children with disabilities, and generally about the beliefs of these stakeholders regarding inclusive education and children with disabilities. The field sites and participants for this varied across 5 states. So these were decided on the basis of diversity and also the availability of partners in different states. And eventually we did Haryana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Assam, and Meghalaya. And we interviewed a total of 95 stakeholders, which involved each teachers, parents, special educators, block resource persons, and officials at various levels of the government, and also civil society persons. This is the graphical representation of the field visits that we did. You can also refer to this in our report. So quickly coming to some of the findings from the field research, we found that the parental choice that is given to children with disabilities in terms of various school models available is not really a choice, and in fact it is limited by financial constraints and child's physical and emotional safety, and also the infrastructural needs of the child, whether they are fulfilled by a particular school or not. We found in some of the cases that while children were initially admitted to to government schools, later had to be moved to special schools or private schools because the government neighborhood schools were not able to cater to their needs. Regarding the identification of these children, which is the first step towards their education and towards their entry into the education system, we found out that the whole methodology regarding identification is not uniform and has so many flaws, because in some districts it relies on teachers to identify these children, while in other districts it relies on block resource person to go to village and identify these children, and sometimes these block resource persons have so many responsibilities that they just go to the village, ask a few people who how many children with disabilities are there in your village, and then they come back with the data. Even during interviews, many block resource persons admitted that they are not able to identify children with disabilities fully, and their methodology does not work always. Regarding the certification process, so once children with disabilities are identified, they need to be certified in order to get benefits from the government and also get aids and appliances. We found out that the process to get the certificate was complicated, and in many cases the centers we had was centers that provide these certificates were really far from the village and the place of residence of these children, and it was very difficult for them to go to these centers to get the certificate. Regarding the aids and appliances that are provided to these children, we found out that the quality is really compromised. In fact, in many, in some of the blocks, the camps that are organized to provide aids and appliances were not organized in so many years, and while they are organized, they do not cater to the specific needs of these children. For example, sometimes the size of these appliances are much bigger than actually needed for a particular child, and then they are of no need for them. Regarding the teachers, we found out that not all. We found out that the general teachers who are not adequately trained to teach these children, and in almost like in most of the cases when we interviewed teachers, they said that we cannot cater to the needs of these children, and while we are given trainings for maybe a couple of days or maybe a week, we cannot learn in a week how to cater to the needs of these children. Regarding special educators, we found out that while they are one of the most important players in the whole implementation mechanism, and we can say that they play the central role in the implementation of inclusive education. They are not given the kind of working conditions they should be working in, and if they are overburdened, in fact there is a lack lack of shortage of these special educators, which does not allow them to follow up with all children with disabilities in their area. Regarding the curriculum and assessment, we found out that across regions, they complain that there are no adaptations to the curriculum and for children with disabilities, and they mostly these curriculum are inaccessible to children with disabilities. And also regarding the infrastructure, we found out that most of the schools do not have fully equipped infrastructure for children with disabilities. And we also try to look into the issue of funds that are available to these schools to provide adequate infrastructure to children with disabilities. And in most cases, we found that there are no segregated funds for this purpose. And in fact, if I remember correctly, in Assam, the person said that in so many years, the funds have reduced gradually, particularly for children with disabilities, as compared to the initially when the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan was started. So after going through all these issues and findings, we identified 4 broad issues, and as legal recommendations, we suggested that the RT Act should be amended to address these 4 big issues that we have identified. So first, as I discussed earlier, that the RT Act does not contain a definition of inclusive education, in fact does not mandate inclusive education, and it does not have norms and standards to cater to the needs of children with disabilities. It should be amended, and the definition should be included. 2, the RT Act gives an option of home-based education for children with disabilities, and there is no clarity regarding how this home-based education should be implemented, how there are no proper standards that are to be followed, and also there are varied views about the benefits of home-based education. So that can be left for discussion. But we recommend that the clarity regarding home-based education should be provided in the Act. Further, the RPWD Act defines special school, provides the option of special schools to children with disabilities, and it says that children with disabilities can also access the option of special schools, but the RT Act does not provide this option at all and does not talk about this. So this clarity should be provided, and it should also talk about special schools and define special schools in that regard. We also found out that the RT Act still refers to some of the terms that have now become redundant in the light of the new disability law, that is the 2016 Act, the terms such as severe disabilities, and it still defines children with disabilities in that context. So we recommend that the RT Act should be amended and updated in the light of the new RPWD Act, and it should update its definitions accordingly. Regarding the option of special school that I was talking about, we, as the RPWD Act says that children with benchmark disabilities should be given an option special schools. We suggest that the definition of schools within the RT Act should also include special schools within it, and accordingly then these special schools can be regulated by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, which is the primary ministry for education, as compared to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, and both the ministries can then start talking to each other. And there could be uniform standards for special schools, just like other schools which are regulated under the RT Act. Regarding the special schools, special educators, we recommend that the special educators should also be identified as teachers under the RT Act, and they should be treated at par with with general teachers, and their working conditions should be provided accordingly. We have also given a broad list, more detailed recommendations in the RT Act, which are there in our report as an annexure, and please feel free to go through the report and do send in your queries regarding that if you have any. So that's all about the report.
Dhwani, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks very much, Shreya. And as Shreya mentioned, please do write in to us with your feedback. We'll move on to the panel discussion now. We'll begin with Priyanka and Rahul talking about the role of the law in guaranteeing the right to inclusive education.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, Rahul. Thank you for speaking with us again today. Also, very quickly, thank you for your valuable feedback on the report itself before it took final shape. Just help us kick things off and get a sense of where we started with this, the legal framework itself. Rahul, I thought it would be great to hear from you what the state of education for children with disabilities perhaps looked like pre-RTE, pre-RPWD itself, because it would be unfair to say things haven't changed, but how slowly, how incremental has this change been from the legal rights framework itself?
Yeah.
And if you could also address the second part of, where we are today with this report coming in, what we tried to do, like Shreya mentioned, was largely a consolidation, harmonization, reconciliation exercise between the RPWD and the RTE. But obviously, this doesn't mean that there aren't gaps, there aren't issues that remain. So what do you see as the way forward in addressing those gaps? And do you think RTE is the vehicle to do that?
Right. Thanks very much, Priyanka, for having me here and for giving me the opportunity to review the report, which made for a very insightful read. I think it does undertake a thoroughgoing analysis of the interaction between these two laws in a way that has perhaps not been done before, and I commend you for having done that. So to answer sort of your questions and also to share my own reflections on the topic, I think I will divide my presentation into three segments. So first, I will just share at the outset some general observations about the state of play when it comes to the education of children with disabilities in India, based on sort of my own experience and what I have gathered anecdotally. Second, reflect on the deficiencies in the law that currently exists more generally in terms of ensuring meaningful education for the disabled. And then thirdly, comment a bit about the prescription that you propose in your report, and then sort of share some concluding remarks. So let me begin by sharing, sort of an anecdote from the time I visited. So in 2018, I was invited by the National Law School of India University in Bangalore to deliver a sensitization session to their first year students on disability, on how they can better interact with students with disabilities. And I did this twice. And one of the things that struck me from those interactions was how little they knew about how children with disabilities, how their peers with disabilities study. For instance, I asked them when they were in school, did they have friends with disabilities? Did they know how students with disabilities in their school studied? What were their general impressions. And first of all, very few people actually volunteered any information, and even those who did had very general and vague remarks. They'd say something like, "Oh yeah, there was this one person that we studied with. You know, we never really got around to talking to them or figuring out how they studied." And therefore, it was a very generic. Their answers were very generic, and that sort of drove home for me the fact that even students who perhaps because of the law school that they are studying in, I assume, come from good educational backgrounds, sort of, you know, in a general sense, and even they did not have in those schools sort of peers with disabilities. Now, I should also briefly comment on my own mainstreaming experience, because I am blind, just so your viewers know, your listeners. You know, I studied in a mainstream school in Nagpur. And while on the one hand, I had a fairly good experience in terms of being able to acquire the skills to sort of thrive in a world that is designed for the able-bodied, which perhaps I would not have had if I had studied in a special school. And you know, I say that because my sense is from a lot of interaction that I've had that in special schools, one does end up missing out on, as in it can be, there's a high degree of insularity there. So in that sense, I had a positive experience, but then also it meant that I did not acquire the specialized skills that one needs in order to thrive as a person with disabilities. For example, Braille, using assistive technology, how to use a cane. These are things that I had to learn later in life on my own. And for example, Braille, I still can't read Braille very adequately, and that is a major handicap for me in my sort of professional pursuits. And you know, one of the things that I did notice, and I spoken about this before also, is, you know, the difference between tolerance and acceptance when it comes to persons with disabilities in mainstream schools, right? So one idea is just to tolerate them and say, look, okay, we will admit you, we'll put you in the class. But the other is to fully embrace the diversity, the uniqueness of the perspective that they bring to the table, and how far that happens, I do not know. The last thing I will say here before moving on to the second segment is, you know, one of the things that we don't talk about when talking about inclusive education in India is how far children with disabilities are actually integrated in non-academic activities that take place in school, because that also goes to is a key part that shapes your overall school life. So, you know, to again share a very small anecdote, I was recently, I interviewed a guy named Cyrus Habib, who's now the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Washington, and he's blind. And you know, he shared the story that when he was in school in 3rd grade, they stopped him from being able to go to the gym and using the equipment there because he was blind. And his mother went to the school, took to task the school authorities, and told them that, you know, you need to let him do it with suitable adaptations, because her rationale was, well, I can tolerate a child, I can live with a child with a broken arm, but not with a broken spirit. So those are some general comments. Now to get to the specific questions about the legal sort of framework, you know, the first point I will make is that under the RPD Act, inclusive education, which you now say should be brought in within the RT Act also, is defined in a far broader way than it is under the UN Convention, right? So if you see the definition under section 2M, I think, it says inclusive education is a system of education where children with disabilities, students with disabilities learn with students without disabilities. But it also says that it is a system of, it is a mode of education where the system of teaching and learning is suitably adapted to meet the needs of students with different disabilities. So in that sense, the second part is very important because it does recognize the need for additional steps to be taken for in integrating these students, and how far that actually happened. The second part is, I think, questionable, you know, from what one gathers. In terms of things like providing additional tutorials to students with disabilities to be able to cope up for example, if you're a blind student in subjects like math and science, how far you are provided descriptions or pictorial things that you have to study in the course of your education, lab experiments, how far are those accommodated? That's kind of where the rubber meets the road, I think, and why we are found lacking in terms of ensuring meaningful inclusion. What struck me, one of the things in your report is where you talk about this teacher, and I shared this with you, Priyanka, when you were talking as well, after the review, is this teacher in rural Madhya Pradesh who said that, when you asked him, his view was that there was no way that he could teach disabled students in a mainstream classroom because that would mean that other students would get distracted and ignored. And when you asked him if his teaching strategies could be adapted to meet the needs of these students, he was silent, and you say that that was beyond his realm of possibility, it seemed. And that kind of, provided the vocabulary for me to understand something that I have experienced all too often in mainstream educational environments, and so have many others. One point that I would make is, in the UNCRPD Committee General Comments 4, they talk about the difference between inclusion and integration, which you have also talked about. So at paragraph 11, they say that, just putting a disabled child in a mainstream school without accompanying structural alterations to the organization, curriculum, learning and teaching strategies is not meaningful inclusion. So integration does not automatically guarantee inclusion. And therefore, if we are arguing for inclusive education, we need to be mindful of this distinction. Just how much time do I have, by the way? I do not want to get too caught up on this stuff if I have limited time left.
I think maybe a couple of minutes, Rahul.
Okay, so I will skip past these sort of rhetorical flourishes and then
and if you could switch on your video, if that's all right. I think your video is turned off.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No problem.
I didn't recognize that. Okay, can you see me now?
Not
okay,
your
not
face
really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay,
now this is perfect. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, okay, let me then briefly just share a few reflections on this proposed prescriptions. I think the set of suggestions that you make for how inclusive education needs to be integrated into the RTE Act, like in terms of the specifics that you have in the schedule for how playground need to be made accessible, libraries, having teaching, having sort of support teachers, those steps, if implemented, can make a meaningful difference in terms of addressing some of the concerns that I have been flagging. The second thing is about the definition of a special school. You say it should be added in section 2O. Now, as Shreya pointed out, the RPD Act itself does not contain the definition of a special school. It just refers to them in section 31. So, one of the things you might want to focus on going forward is how do you define special schools, given that they are not currently defined in Indian law. The suggestion that you make about updating the law, the RTE, to bring in, to sort of reference the RPD as opposed to the 1995 Act, those are all necessary changes. And I guess even in the budget recently, they were referring to the PWD Act of 95. So that's sort of a long-standing problem, like a widespread, not long-standing. Also, the points that you make about in section 23 about bringing in, the kind of providing core competencies to mainstream teachers to enable them to undertake inclusive education meaningfully. Those suggestions I found quite useful. But one of the things that you will have to think about is, one of the problems that often takes place is that children with different disabilities have distinct needs, and therefore a tutor who has been who's equipped to teach a blind student, we cannot assume that that person has necessarily acquired the ability to meaningfully implement inclusive education. So how do we design curricula for them that caters to different disabilities is something that you need to think about. And then just very quickly, one final one final comment that I will make is about the curriculum that you've talked about, right? Under Section 29, that the Rehabilitation Council of India should be responsible for prescribing what curriculum can be added to ensure inclusive education is also part of the mix. There, I think you could also look at how the universities that specifically exist on to study disability-related issues, like the Shakuntala Mishra Rehabilitation University and the one in Chitrakoot, how those could also be brought in to work with the RCI to design the curriculum. So those are sort of some general ideas that I have. I'm happy to talk more in the Q&A segment.
Thank you very much, Rahul. I think that fits in, the note on which you've ended fits in quite neatly with the next panelist whom we have, Akanksha Tyagi, who's an educator and who will be able to give us some practical insights on some of the challenges that you've mentioned. So I'll invite Tanushri to begin this dialogue with Akanksha. And in the meantime, just want to draw all the attendees' attention to some of the resources and suggestions that Omar has posted on the webinar chat. I think some very valuable suggestions on how to deal with education in these challenging times. So over to you, Tanushri and Akanksha.
Thank you, Dhwani. Hi, Akanksha ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good evening, Tanushri ma'am.
So just to start, I wanted to get, if you could sort of give a brief background कि आप कितने time से पढ़ा रहे हैं, आपकी specialization क्या रही थी in your training, and as a mentor teacher for special education आपका role क्या रहता है?
मैम अगर मैं अपनी बात करूं तो मैंने 3.5 साल पहले डिपार्टमेंट ज्वाइन किया था, एंड ये मैं मेंशन करना चाहूंगी कि जब मैंने डिपार्टमेंट ज्वाइन किया था, यानी कि जो मेरा बैच था जब हमने डिपार्टमेंट ज्वाइन किया, दैट वाज अ 3rd बैच जिसने ज्वाइन किया था, और सिंस 1992 से ये 3rd ही बैच था जिसने ज्वाइन किया, एंड वी वर लाइक 600 अराउंड 600 कैंडिडेट्स who have joined the department. So now you take, आपकी रिपोर्ट में भी ये मेंशन है कि lack of special educators है ही. So जब मैं डिपार्टमेंट में आई तो I was deputed to 2 schools, 3 days in one school and 3 days to another school. So वहाँ से जर्नी जो थी वो मेरी स्टार्ट हुई. I have done my B.Ed in special education from Delhi University, and my specialization is visual impairment. But जब मैं स्कूल सेटअप में आई तो मेरे पास 2 hearing impaired बच्चे थे. So it was very difficult for me कि how to tackle them, because we have read something about hearing impairment, but we haven't hands-on training for them. So मुझे वापस अपने कॉलेज भागना पड़ा, वापस मुझे लाइब्रेरी में बैठना पड़ा, अपने टीचर से बात करनी पड़ी, वापस से वो सारे ट्रायल एंड एरर्स जिन्हें बोलते हैं कि ये नहीं हो रहा तो इसको करते हैं, ये नहीं हो रहा तो इसको करते हैं, बट वो भी यूजफुल था. बट उसके बाद में जो हमारा डिपार्टमेंट था उसने बहुत ही एक अच्छा इनिशिएटिव लिया. विद इन 1 ईयर हमें क्रॉस डिसेबिलिटी ट्रेनिंग जो थी वो प्रोवाइड की गई, एंड थ्रू ऑल लाइक लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटी, intellectual disability and physical impairment, मतलब all hearing impairment. So बहुत सारी जो हम लोगों की खुद की जो disability थी वो दूर हुई, and we open up to other disability also. और अब हम ज़्यादा resourceful हैं और ज़्यादा अच्छे से हम काम करते हैं. Since 2 year मैं mentor teacher as a mentor teacher काम कर रही हूँ डिपार्टमेंट में. तो मेंटोर टीचर इज लाइक स्पेशल एजुकेटर. जैसे स्पेशल एजुकेटर एक्टिव सपोर्ट में रहता है हमेशा अपने स्टूडेंट के, वैसे ही मेंटोर टीचर के पास 5 से 6 स्कूल होते हैं जिसमें वो एक्टिव सपोर्ट में रहता है अपने टीचर्स के लिए, टू द ऑल द स्टेक होल्डर ऑफ द स्कूल. और हम यहाँ पर ये एक सेमी स्ट्रक्चर्ड गाइडेंस होता है, जिसमें कि हम बच्चे की जो भी जोनल प्रॉक्सिमल डेवलपमेंट हो सकता है उसको इंक्रीज करने की कोशिश करते हैं। और मतलब यहाँ पर भी जैसे वहाँ पर एक्टिव सपोर्ट की जरूरत पड़ती है, यहाँ पे भी एक्टिव सपोर्ट की जरूरत पड़ती है। और जब मैं अपनी अगर जर्नी की बात करूं, जब मैंने डिपार्टमेंट ज्वाइन किया था, सो जब मैंने अपना बताया कि आई एम स्पेशल एजुकेटर, तो इट्स लाइक ओके। बट अभी अगर कोई आता है, मैं बहुत प्राउडली कहती हूँ कि आई एम टीजीटी स्पेशल एजुकेशन टीचर। सो अभी उसको मतलब विद इन 3.5 ईयर इतना मैंने चेंज होते हुए देखा है कि मतलब अपने कलीग्स को ही कि बहुत मतलब इसको बहुत पॉजिटिवली अब लोग देखते हैं। एचओएस, हमारे जो रेगुलर टीचर्स हैं, हमारे पेरेंट्स हैं, हमारी एसएमसीज है, वो सभी लोग हमें बहुत रिसोर्सफुल टीचर के रूप में अब देखते हैं। जबकि हमें पहले एज अ मिसलीनियस टीचर ट्रीट किया जाता था कि आप ये नहीं कर सकते हैं, आप वो नहीं कर सकते हैं। सो ये चेंजेस मैंने अपने डिपार्टमेंट में होते देखे हैं। और अगर मैं अपना देखूं कि एज अ मेंटोर टीचर, क्योंकि हमें सेमिनार्स लेने होते हैं रेगुलरली, तो उसमें हम जरूर इस चीज को क्योंकि हम 200 मेंटोर टीचर्स हैं एंड 200 में से सिर्फ 3 ही स्पेशल एजुकेटर्स हैं। तो हम तीनों ही लोग इस बात का ध्यान रखते हैं कि जब कभी भी हम कोई सेमिनार ले रहे हों या कोई भी हमें बोलने का मौका दिया जाए, तो हम अपनी इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन या अपना कुछ ऐसा जरूर बोलें जिसमें कि हमारे बच्चों से रिलेटेड कुछ चीज जरूर उसमें जाए। तो हम अपने मतलब बाकी जो हमारे साथी मेंटोर टीचर हैं उनको टाइम टू टाइम हम अवेयर करते रहते हैं कि आपके स्कूल में आप जाओ, अपने स्पेशल एजुकेटर से बात करो, उनसे जाके मतलब बैठो उनके साथ में, आप देखो कि वो कैसे काम करते हैं। बिकॉज जब एक स्पेशल एजुकेटर काम करता है स्कूल में, तो उसके साथ में होता है कि आपके सिर्फ 4 ही तो बच्चे हैं, आपके सिर्फ 8 ही तो बच्चे हैं, बाकी टीचर को तो बहुत कुछ करना पड़ रहा है। तो उस वाली टेंडेंसी से बाहर निकलने के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि आप स्पेशल एजुकेटर के साथ में बैठो। तो यहाँ पे अब ये सिनेरियो है कि एटलीस्ट जिन स्कूलों में मैं जाती हूँ अभी, उन स्कूलों में स्पेशल एजुकेटर हर एक स्कूल में, अगर आपको पता हो तो हर एक स्कूल में एक एकेडमिक रिसोर्स टीम बनाई जाती है। तो पहले इस एकेडमिक रिसोर्स टीम का स्पेशल एजुकेटर मेंबर नहीं होता था, अब स्पेशल एजुकेटर उस टीम का मेंबर होता है और वो अपने सजेशन देता है। और अब हम एज अ टीम काम करते हैं, अब स्पेशल एजुकेटर किसी आइसोलेशन में काम नहीं करता है। सो ये मेरी जर्नी रही है मैम 3.5 साल की। आई होप कुछ क्लियर किया होगा।
नहीं, थैंक यू सो मच मैम, काफी एनरिचिंग जर्नी रही है आपकी। अभी अगर हम बात करें जो पैंडेमिक में जो सिचुएशन है, तो अगर आप कुछ उस बारे में शेयर करना चाहेंगे कि जो डिसेबल बच्चे हैं उनके क्या स्पेसिफिक चैलेंजेस आ रहे हैं, क्योंकि सरकार बहुत तरह की चीजें करने की कोशिश कर रही है बच्चों की शिक्षा के लिए सिचुएशन में, और क्या स्पेशल एजुकेटर्स या टीचर्स क्या कर रहे हैं उन चैलेंजेस को ओवरकम करने के लिए।
ओके तो मैम अगर मैं बात करूं तो हमारे जो CWSN बच्चे हैं वो कोई 4 लेवल पे, मतलब जो स्पेशली 4 लेवल हैं उन पे सबसे ज्यादा जो है उनको अडेप्ट करना पड़ता है खुद को। इसमें है साइकोलॉजिकल लेवल, फिजिकल लेवल, एकेडमिक लेवल एंड बिहेवियर लेवल। साइकोलॉजिकल लेवल पे अगर हम बात करें तो हमारा जो बच्चा है वो ज्यादा डिपेंडेंट है अपने सिबलिंग्स पे, अपने पेरेंट्स के ऊपर। जबकि जो बच्चा जब स्कूल आ रहा था तो हमने उसके कोई पीयर ग्रुप बनाया हुआ था, हमने उसके एक बड़ी सिस्टम बनाया हुआ था जो उससे बहुत कंफर्टेबल है। तो वहां पे उसको उतनी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम स्कूल में नहीं आती है, हम हमेशा रहते हैं उसके सपोर्ट में। लेकिन जब वो घर में गया है तो उसको वो सपोर्ट नहीं मिल रहा है, अभी वो मिस कर रहा है उस चीज को। तो साइकोलॉजिकल लेवल पे भी क्योंकि वो डिपेंडेंट है ज्यादा अपने पेरेंट्स पे और सिबलिंग्स पे, तो ये उसको प्रॉब्लम आ रही है। सेकेंड चीज फिजिकल लेवल पे, क्योंकि बाहर नहीं जा पा रहा है, उतने सारे लोगों से सोशलाइज नहीं हो पा रहा है, तो ये भी एक प्रॉब्लम है। एकेडमिक लेवल की अगर हम बात करें मैम, तो 2013 में एक हमारी पॉलिसी आई थी, नेशनल पॉलिसी ऑन यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉनिक असेसिबिलिटी। इसका मतलब था कि जो भी हमारे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स जो भी हमारे इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली लाइक इंटरनेट और ये सब चीजें जो हैं, उसको हमें उस जो हमारे डिसेबिलिटी के जो लोग हैं उसको वो भी बहुत अच्छे से यूज कर पाए और एसेसिबल मिले। लेकिन अभी तक वो चीज नहीं हो पाई है। हमने फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे फिर भी काम किया है, नॉट वो भी अप टू द मार्क नहीं है, लेकिन हमने इस जगह पर डिजिटलाइज वे में हमने काम नहीं किया है। और मैं अभी देख रही हूँ पिछले 1-1.5 महीने से कि डिजिटल जो दुनिया है वो अपने आप में एक एक्सक्लूड करने वाला चीज है अपने हमारे डिसेबिलिटी वाले बच्चों के लिए। तो हमें उस पे काम करने की बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है। और अगर मैं अपने डिपार्टमेंट की बात करूं तो हमारे डिपार्टमेंट ने अभी एक पॉलिसी काइंड ऑफ एक एडवाइजरी जारी की है कि हमें बच्चों से रेगुलर कांटेक्ट में रहना है। हमें रोज बच्चों से रोज नहीं तो मतलब बच्चों से बात करते रहना है, और उनका खाने से लेके हर चीज का हमें पता करना है कि इफ देयर इज एनी प्रॉब्लम, और अगर उस बच्चे को कहीं पे खाने या इस तरीके की कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो हमें रेगुलर उसकी रिपोर्ट भेजनी पड़ रही है। लाइक आपको ज्वाइन करने से पहले मैं वही रिपोर्ट भेज रही थी कि मेरे बच्चे के पास जो है आज राशन नहीं है लेकिन उसको खाना मिल गया है। सो ये हमने एक किया है। प्लस में हमारा एक HBI प्रोग्राम भी चल रहा है, होम बेस्ड इंटरवेंशन, जिसपे कि हम ये जो चारों लेवल हैं जो कि बिहेवियरल या साइकोलॉजिकल या हमारा फिजिकल और एकेडमिक्स, इन चारों चीजों को जो हमने थोड़ा सा फुलफिल करने की कोशिश की है एज ए स्पेशल एजुकेटर, तो हम HBI प्लान के थ्रू करते हैं, जिसकी रिपोर्ट जो है पहले हर वीक में एक बार जाती थी, अभी 15 डेज में एक बार जा रही है। सो हमारा डिपार्टमेंट ये इनिशिएटिव जो है वो ले रहा है। लेकिन अभी भी जो काम बच्चों को मिल रहा है, ऑनलाइन जो काम मिल रहा है, वो बच्चों अप टू द लेवल नहीं है, मतलब नीड बेस्ड नहीं है। तो जो काम उनके क्लास ग्रुप में आ रहा होता है उसको पहले हम एनालाइज करते हैं, उसको सिंप्लीफाई करते हैं, किस बच्चे को पिक्टोरियल फॉर्म में चाहिए, किस बच्चे को ऑडियो फॉर्म में चाहिए। तो आप देखिए कि अगर एक दिन में 3 टीचर भेज रहे हैं तो हमारा पूरा दिन उन 3 टीचर को के काम को सिंप्लीफाई करने में चला जाता है। लेकिन हर एक स्पेशल एजुकेटर की एक अपनी एक स्पेशलाइजेशन होगी जरूर, जो उसने ग्रेजुएशन में पढ़ा होगा। जरूरी नहीं है कि हर टीचर ने साइंस पढ़ा हो, जरूरी नहीं है कि हर टीचर ने सोशल साइंस पढ़ा हो। तो इस चीज को यहाँ पर बहुत मतलब कभी कभी बहुत लगता है कि हर टीचर वैसे नहीं हो सकता है, हर टीचर की उतनी नहीं हो सकती है। तो रेगुलर टीचर को भी हमें कंसिडरेशन में लेना पड़ता है कि हमें कुछ बता दो या हमें भी थोड़ा सा गाइड कर दो। तो जब हम स्कूल में थे तब हम एज अ टीम काम कर रहे थे, जिसमें हमारा आपने अगर सुना हो कि हमारे दिल्ली में ऑलरेडी IEP चलती ही है, इंडिविजुअलाइज्ड एजुकेशनल प्लानिंग, जिसमें क्लास टीचर, सब्जेक्ट टीचर, बच्चे का पेरेंट, HOS और बच्चा, और हम स्पेशल एजुकेटर बैठते हैं, बच्चे के लिए गोल सेट करते हैं कि बच्चे का लेवल क्या है, लास्ट टाइम उसने क्या अचीव किया, अब हम उसके साथ क्या आगे करने जा रहे हैं। तो वो स्कूल लेवल में हमें लगातार उस चीज का फीडबैक मिलता आ रहा था, लेकिन अभी वो फीडबैक उतना उस लेवल पे नहीं आ रहा है, क्योंकि जैसे मैं बोल रही हूँ कि बच्चा साइकोलॉजिकल लेवल पे भी कहीं ना कहीं डिप्राइव हो ही रहा है। और जैसे मैंने UNHR की अभी रिपोर्ट में थोड़े दिन पहले पढ़ ही रही थी, तो उसमें ये बात बहुत क्लियरली मेंशन था कि हमारे बच्चे जो हैं, ये तो मैं अपने दिल्ली की बात कर रही हूँ, लेकिन उसमें होल वर्ल्ड की बात की गई थी कि डिजिटलाइज्ड होने की वजह से कहीं ना कहीं हमारे जो CWSN बच्चे हैं वो एकेडमिकली लेफ्ट मतलब पीछे रह जा रहे हैं। तो इस पे थोड़ा सा मुझे लगता है कि मेरा सजेशन आपके लिए रहेगा कि आप इस पे थोड़ा सा कहीं से कुछ अगर पॉइंट आउट कर सकते हैं, किसी को बता सकते हैं तो प्लीज बताइए, क्योंकि हमें बहुत ज्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ती है इस चीज के लिए और हर टीचर वैसे नहीं हो सकता है।
Yeah, actually, Akanksha, thank you very much for sharing those your personal experiences so honestly. And I think on that note, I think Deepti from Jai Vakil has a lot to say about the resources that they have also developed to help children with special needs at this time. So I'm going to hand it over now to Naina and Deepti to tell us about the landscape around special schools in India. Thank you very much, Akanksha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhwani. So I'll take up from here, and we could also probably see the resources that have been prepared by Jai Vakil on this on the chat box here. So yeah, Deepti, the question that a lot of people who have registered have been asking in the current times is that how are students who have been probably part of vocational training or employment prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and even to the shutdowns in general, how have they been facilitated during this time, especially in light of what where Jai Vakil Foundation is working in Maharashtra? And secondly, there are even the home-based education system is already in place, but there have been contentions regarding the system in general, but how let's say, if you could shed some light on how special educators in times such as these are being facilitated in case of the home-based education program.
Sure. Thank you so much first for inviting me and such a well-researched and detailed report on realities that schools like us sort of live through by every day. Thank you, Akanksha and Rahul, for your insights. As far as home-based learning is concerned, I think the act itself lacks clarity in terms of content and execution. We at Jai Vakil work with children with intellectual disability, and intellectual disability within the realm of disability also is sort of a little bit invisible because it's not so apparent. And a lot of our children have associated disorders like autism or Down syndrome, Fragile X, cerebral palsy, etc. We at Jai Vakil are actually big champions of school-based education because we believe that, of course, we provide education and we have a specialized curriculum to work with children, but also school provides avenues for emotional development. It enhances children's social development, gives them confidence, gives them areas of decision making. So we truly believe that school-based learning is something that the children get advantage from. However, in COVID situation, with this reality, school home-based education has become something that we had to rethink, right? So we adapted ourselves, we adapted our curriculum, and we decided to think about what exactly our children would need. Before sort of starting on a journey about creating online content, which we did not have, we decided that we will get in a dialogue with the stakeholders in question. So we consulted with the parents or the primary caregiver of the child to understand what exactly the needs of the family were. Surprisingly, actually, academics or learning lags were really not on top of mind for most parents. What they were struggling with was how to put a structure, how to get the child into a routine. How do I make my child understand what's happening and how to deal with it? How do I, sort of prevent a meltdown, or what do I do in case there is one? So those were issues that parents were struggling with. Those were challenges that they were facing every day. We have mothers who were working continuously at home and also looking after the children. The last thing we want to do is burden a parent or a caregiver with a long list of things to do, which she may not feel equipped to do right now. So our first phase of videos that went out, or the first videos that we designed, were primarily around behavior, primarily around how to, so we have a whole model on behavior and what to do in case there is a meltdown, how to prevent a meltdown, how to understand the situation your child is going through, an entire piece on what COVID is, adapted to an understanding of the child of our school. So that was one bit. The second thing that we decided that was important at this time, owing to all the sort of anxiety that everybody was going through, were avenues and things that the family could do together. So there was a lot of videos on music and dance and recreation, so as to get their minds off this situation at hand and to bring them together as families. Also keeping in mind that the primary caregiver is mostly the mother, but at this time the siblings, the fathers, the aunts and uncles were all at home. So as to relieve the mother of a little bit of a the stress that she goes through on an everyday and improves the family as a whole. So a lot of our videos were based on how to get music and dance and recreation and give the child avenues to be. Then there was this whole issue on how do we get fitness into their lives, right? Because a lot of our children go through therapy. And in the absence of school, therapy was not getting provided. So how do we ensure that within the day that they have, how do we get fitness and into their daily schedule? So our videos were on fitness and yoga, etc. Now, that's the first leg of videos that went out, and I'm sure you're sharing the YouTube link on that. That was the first leg. Then, of course, we decided that learning is something we obviously want to focus on. So there were academic videos that are going to go out and are going out as we speak. Our children with intellectual disability find it difficult to learn new things, right? And in this current situation, we don't want to bombard them with a brand new information or different type of learning. So what we are doing is we're trying to reinforce what the child already knows to ensure that there is no learning lag. And we are scaffolding what the child is already learning rather than getting completely new concept in place. So our curriculum, so our videos right now is building on what the children have already learned. So that's our repository of videos that we've made. But we've also made videos because we work with an entire spectrum. In intellectual disabilities, there are videos on activities of daily living. There are videos on how to get your child to sort of help in the household. So those videos are also there. What we've also realized is just putting the videos out there is not going to be sufficient, right? The parent might get overwhelmed. We have currently 64 videos that have gone out, right? They may get overwhelmed. They don't know how to choose. They don't know, because within fitness, there are multiple levels depending on the ability of the child. So if I'm a parent and I open the YouTube and there are 64 videos, I don't know which one to pick for my child because I'm not trained to do that. They're not expected to do that. So what we are doing is, we are, like Akanksha said, and we also practice in our school, there are individualized education plans. We are trying to tailor make a timetable for a child. Now, there are three things that we sort of keep in mind when we are doing this timetabling for the child. One is, what is the age and ability of the child? Second is, what is the repository of videos that we have that we can refer to the parent? And third is the reality of the family. Now, if there is a parent who has 20 people in the house and there is no room to move and the mother is working in the morning making breakfast for everybody, and I say, no, but you must do assembly at 8 o'clock, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, and we want to set up the parent for success and not failure. So we are tailor making these timetables for every single family. So the teacher is placing calls to every single parent, trying and understanding what is their routine, what is the ability of the child, so, and which video to pitch for which child. And this sort of timetabling is going to happen for every single child. Once the intention was to create this for only children of Jai Vakil, but when this repository was built and when we saw it and when we circulated it among people who are in the sector, we realized that a larger ecosystem can benefit from it because it is so detailed, it sort of addresses the entire spectrum, and hence we've decided that we will open it out, and anybody who wants to use this and benefit from this is more than welcome. So this is what we are doing. As in regards your question about vocational training, there are a lot of skills that the children learn in vocational training, and we want the children to continue and not forget, as with any other child. However, there is a paucity of resources at home, right? I don't have beads and I don't have bags and I don't have stuff. So keeping that in mind, what we are doing is we are adapting our curriculum that we teach in Jai Vakil to easily available resources. So if I'm learning how to make a garland in Jai Vakil, I'm using old milk milk bags to make that same garland, where the skill and the technique will be the same, but of course the resource will be different. So all of these things with available resources at home, with simple instructions, with easy to follow sort of advice is being built, and it is being put in the repository for anybody to access and use in these times. So this is what we are doing in terms of the resources that we are providing for our children.
Thank you, Deepti. I will just pose another short question, which is regarding the report itself. So it says that special schools are not under the ambit of RTE, of the RTE Act. So where do you see the position of special schools in this whole question of inclusive education? That is one. And this and it's a follow-up question from your discussion previously, which is that how do people in remote areas access these resources? Surely because internet services themselves are not accessible.
Right. So to go with your first question, as Rahul rightly mentioned, inclusive education in text says that every child should receive education and the material should be suitably adapted. Right. I want to answer this question by sort of telling you about one child in my school, one of my favorites. His name is Fardeen. He's 13 years old. He has an IQ of 30 and he has cerebral palsy, hence limited mobility. He may or very little comprehension of what I say to him and cannot express more than his basic needs to me. Envision him in a classroom, which is probably 40 children in a class with with a teacher who may or may not be equipped to handle his needs, or his peers may not be sensitized. The curriculum may not be up to his level. He may be way above his level. How do we envision this child to be included in this classroom, right? As special educators and somebody who works in a special school working for 75 years, inclusion is our larger goal. Nothing would make us more happy than our children being included in society. However, till the larger ecosystem changes, till there are checks and balances in place, till the time there are opportunities till the time the system is ready to accept and adapt our children into the system, I think there is a long way to go for that. Like your report has pointed out, like Akanksha said, there are many gaps in between. We would be more than happy for children to be included, because that's what our ultimate aim is. But I think there is a little bit of a gap in that, and we all need to strive for that, and we need to make policy changes, or we need to speak to the government, and that's something that we are looking forward to. That's one. To the second question that you are saying is that how do we access? Right now, currently what we're doing is, of course, it's not available. Some of our parents do not have smartphones and internet. So what we're doing is we're trying to give them a call and explain to them what we mean in the video. And hence we are sort of delineating the steps or the task analysis of what the video is saying to the parent, and then trying to follow up. Like Akanksha said, we are also trying to call up every single parent, not only to understand where the child is lacking in terms of academics, etc., but also trying to understand what is the mental health of the family, where is it that we can help, trying to provide counseling support, trying to provide support in terms of grocery, etc., trying to equip the family as such and not just the child. So our focus is largely the whole unit, the family, and of course, the child at the center.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deepti. It's wonderful to hear about the work that Jai Vakil is doing. Everyone, please check out these resources and this repository. It's really inspiring that this is the kind of work that's going into this at the moment. So to end with our last panelist, Mr. Arman Ali, we'll have Pooja Pandey ask him a few questions on, as Deepti mentioned, how we can get this larger ecosystem to change, and how should our advocacy efforts be best geared towards bringing about this change.
Hi everyone, so I've been introduced already. I'm Pooja. My question is for Arman. So Arman, drawing from your wide experience of advocacy, we would like to understand your learnings in the area of education when the disability categorization in itself has so many specific groups and other socioeconomic differences. And just to break the question into two parts, of course, there has been like general advocacy efforts, and there must be some particular advocacy efforts happening during the lockdown, during COVID. If you can sort of like tell us before COVID and after COVID, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
You will have to repeat these questions. I have a very short memory. Okay, so hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. And I have been listening to each of the panelists. It's when you talk about education, you know, I will start with myself. Okay, I am a person with disability myself, and I have dropped out of school twice. Okay, I first I was put into a school where my brother was studying, and the principal was a friend of my dad. So he thought they would be very accommodating and would take care of my needs. But because it was inaccessible and I was very young, I was in nursery, play school, whatever kind we call it. The principal asked my father to, you know, to take me away, like they cannot support me. So that was one. Finally, in another school, to cut the story short, I was put into, again, you know, my brother was put there so that he could support me going in out of the school. My classroom was on the second floor. There was a lift which only the principal was supposed to use, not allowed me. So I used to climb stairs, second floor every day, and then I had to go through a surgery, and I dropped out of school in class 7. And after class 7, I've studied from NIOS, National Open Schooling thing, and I've done my senior secondary there, and then I've done my graduation through a distance mode from Manipal University. So I am myself a subject, you know, I've been through all these systems where you talk about inclusive education, and then you know, home-based schooling, and then this distance mode and all that. You know, I think the stereotypes with disability remains, you know, despite the fact that India has the second legislation for people with disability in this country, it remains to be a stigma for people with disability. The fact that children with disability don't see school in their lifetime, okay? I mean, because the parents don't know, because the idea is to cure these children the moment you see there's a deformity, or you abandon them. So how do you come to a place where you think that there is a need to advocate all this important issue of you know, education? And education is something which is a fundamental right, and something which is a responsibility is on the state and not on the parents to get the child, you know, education. So I think this is absolutely not clear in our country. People don't understand. People don't look at a schooling system run by a government as a quality education. And then if you look at education for children with disability, and if you look at across disability, unfortunately in our country, when you talk about disabled people, you visualize a child on a wheelchair, or a person on a wheelchair, or somebody, you know, to the most you could think somebody who's blind. But there's a spectrum of things, and especially children who have intellectual and developmental disability. You know, you cannot imagine their plight. What one was going through, one goes through. One, disability remains an afterthought in this country. It is never. You yourself have done this study. When you look at the history, when RTE was formed, students with disability or children with disability was completely forgotten. There was, you know, the people with working with the disability sector, there was some advocacy done, and then finally it was included later on into the marginalized children. The definition, they included disabled children. You look at, you know, do we have a choice? You know, if you're a child with disability, you don't have a choice whether you go to a special school or you go to a regular school. Each one is a different struggle. Each one, there's no support system. There is nothing. Each one will come with its own criteria. Each one will come with their own gatekeeping. So I think the fact that people look at disabled people as somebody who is sick and needs to be fixed and cured, the question of educating them, it doesn't even rise. And the vicious cycle of disability and poverty, which you know, is the core of a lot of our problem. precisely when it comes to people with disability, remains, again, you look at things that what will, even if you put somebody in an education system, what will he or she be able to do? Because you see so much of, people doing something because of their physical ability, how will he or she go to office, how will they do certain tasks and so on and so forth. I can go on ranting. Please stop me whenever you want to, and if you think I have distracted from whatever you want me to speak on. But I will continue. I said RTE, and then I'll again remind everybody about the National Education Policy. It completely forgot disability again. It didn't refer to the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016 when it was in a draft state. Irony, if you look at the National Education Policy and you look at the list of departments and people they have consulted, you will not find our Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities name there. You'll not find the institutions like the Rehabilitation Council of India to be there. Then who are they consulting? And how are these organizations not taking a lead in getting disability? So in that situation where even we Vidhi was involved, we all got together, we looked at the entire policy, we found out the gap, and then so much so that we had to reach out to the chairman of the NEP, Mohandas Pai, and then finally we could get one paragraph inserted into this National Education Policy, which says that look into the provisions of our PWD Act 2016 and align it, so on. Anything that you do with education, quality is not the criteria here. Home-based education. What is home-based education? There's no definition. What do you mean by it? I call it a scam, especially when it comes to initiatives like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or Samagrik Shiksha Abhiyan. How many teachers are there to do these home visits and to monitor and to teach? And how are you identifying such children? Is there a choice given to such children? Can you come to school or not? And how are you putting them? So I think there is a need to revamping all this. And I don't see any effort. I don't see any effort on part of parents particularly. And another irony is, most of the children with disability are left on their mothers. Their father provide for them, but you will never find their father to go to a school for the parent-teacher meeting or whatever if their children are going to a special school or a formal school system or whatever it is. So the stereotypes with disability remains. As a country, we need to do a lot to remove such barriers first, to be able to, otherwise, the entire one generation of disabled people will be, wasted. So I think you can ask me if you want to have any.
No, actually, that was very helpful. If you can just tell a little bit about the current advocacy work, if any, if they're happening during COVID times and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Now, during this COVID time, again, people with disability, not particular to do with education, I think are the worst affected. People are worst affected and almost forgotten. Now, Ministry of Human Resource Development, they take pride, they issue this orders letter from their ministry to the chief secretaries of introducing initiatives like e-Diksha, e-Pathshala, and then and then there are disabled people and professionals and organizations who are working with it, they are asking questions. There is not a single response from the ministry. I have been personally trying to speak to the joint secretary. He has refused to respond to my WhatsApp messages, forget about email and all. I mean, and the consultant who's working there, he said, yeah, we are looking into the matter. There is, how about accessibility of, I will not even talk about accessibility of such an app. In India, there are no standards. If anything that you procure in India, there's something called BIS, which sets the standard. In India, there is no standard set for accessible ICT. So whoever is developing this app, either the government or anybody else, they have nothing to guide them on what basis they are being procured or being developed. And this COVID-19 situation, I think efforts are very scarce and very few people are able to think of in this line, because everyone is under some stress or they are losing their livelihood. Disabled people themselves don't have any livelihood and they're dependent on their families. Their families are losing livelihood, and then when it comes to survival, they become the last priority. And how much can special schools who are not recognized by anybody, they're not supported by the government, they, very few do get some grant from government, and there is no intention of formalizing this special schools. There has to be an effort where you turn these special schools into resource centers. Each special school can support so many other government and other regular schools, and that will promote inclusive education. These thoughts are not there. Institutions like Rehabilitation Council of India, we don't know who is the chairman there. So it says a lot about the state of affair in this country when you talk about education and people with disability.
Thanks, Arman. I think maybe we could take a pause here and get some of the questions in from some of the participants.
Yeah, I was running out of ideas.
No. And we can take up some of the issues that you've raised in the Q&A session as well. So for one, I think first we'd like to ask Mr. Anuj Jain, Executive Director of the National Association for the Deaf, to give a few of his comments on the report as well as on the topic of the webinar.
Thank you, Dhwani, for accepting my 2 points, for letting me speak a little here. Inclusive education, I feel that the government might have a plan, but they never include deaf students. Deaf students are never included. Even if visually impaired or locomotive disability students are included. Deaf students are never included because sign language interpreters are not available. And special schools for deaf are reducing, and they're not inclusive, they're not added in special schools. And if they're starting with inclusive, they're starting with their goals and everything, but they do not have interpreters. They do not have interpreters at all. They do not have salaries to give them to these interpreters. And the World Federation of the Deaf does not want inclusive education because the deaf community will reduce to nothing. They will have nothing because their language, their sign language, and their linguistic deaf culture and everything. For them, sign language is very important, and that's not used. And in these schools, nobody knows sign language. The teachers do not know how to sign, so they do not know how to teach. They do not communicate with the students. So all the students are left without an education, so they do not know anything. So this suffering, they're discriminated against. So it needs to be progressive. They need RPWD bill has included that deaf schools must have teachers themselves must know sign language. They must know how to sign. But the implementation of the RPWD Act is not done. The teachers are still using speech with deaf students, so the deaf students are suffering so much. But now, because of coronavirus, this pandemic, all the systems are changing, everything is changing, and very quickly everything is changing. He's giving an example for his son. He's receiving emails from his school for all kind of work from school. He's getting daily emails that he's supposed to have Zoom classes and everything. And that made him think, what about the deaf schools? What about the deaf students who go to deaf schools? What about them? How are they studying? How will they study? For me, for example, I am also a student of a college, and I am receiving mails, I am having Zoom calls. But that's not happening for deaf students. MHRD suggested for a Swayam TV, which will accommodate for education for hearing people. But it's not inclusive for PWD students. He's so shocked, and it's very wrong because it's not inclusive. What happens to visually impaired students? What happens to deaf students? They are not included. Disabled students are not included in this. And in India, all deaf people are very upset with MHRD. They're very upset and they need to advocate and they need to keep fighting for this.
Thank you. Thank you. These are very important points. I'm very glad you raised them, and I hope we'll have the opportunity to look into these in more detail. I'm going to hand it over to Shreya to moderate and to take up some of the questions that we've received over the course of this hour and a half. Again, apologies in advance for not being able to answer all of them right away. We'll try and have a session for about 10 to 15 minutes if the panelists don't mind going a little bit over schedule. And for the rest, we will do our best to get back to you personally over email or through our social media accounts. So Shreya, please go ahead and pick some of the questions for discussion. Hi, Shreya, are you online? Can you hear?
Sorry, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my first question I would like to direct to Akanksha ma'am. Actually, I cannot see the name of the attendee, but I would forward the question. And it says that how digital education is not inclusive, and also how do you decide the level of the child while catering to their needs?
ओके सो एक्चुअली मैंने पहले ही मेंशन किया था कि वी कनेक्ट टू स्टूडेंट्स एंड वी फॉर्म आईपीस फॉर ईच स्टूडेंट एंड जब कभी भी हमारे पास कोई बच्चा आता है तो उसके पहले हम लगभग 1 महीने के लिए बच्चे को अंडर ऑब्जर्वेशन रखते हैं. मतलब वी ऑब्जर्व कि क्या प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं, बच्चे के पेरेंट के साथ में बात करना, टीचर के साथ में बात करना, क्योंकि हम बच्चे के एकदम बैकग्राउंड में जाके कि कहाँ से प्रॉब्लम स्टार्ट हुआ है वहां से हम काम करना शुरू करते हैं. तो ये हमारा लेवल होता है कि हम कैसे चेक करते हैं, क्योंकि हमारी आईपीज जो होती हैं वो हर महीने रिवाइज होती हैं. सो इस तरीके से हम बच्चे का लेवल जो है वो हमारे पास एक काइंड ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हमारा रेगुलर बेसिस पे चलता ही रहता है. तो स्पेशल एजुकेटर के पास में बच्चे का लेवल होता ही है. और डिजिटल एजुकेशन क्यों इंक्लूसिव नहीं है, तो अगर जूम क्लासेस हो रही हैं और एक बच्चा जो है वो हियरिंग इम्पेयर्ड है, सो उसके लिए वो जूम क्लासेस मीनिंगलेस है. अगर एक विजुअली इम्पेयर्ड बच्चे के पास में व्हाट्सएप पे या मैसेज के थ्रू कोई काम दिया जा रहा है, एसएमएस के थ्रू अगर कोई काम दिया जा रहा है, और उस बच्चे के पास ना तो टॉकिंग फोन है ना ही स्मार्टफोन है जो टॉक करता हो, और उसके पेरेंट्स भी इलिटरेट हैं, क्योंकि मैं एक गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में बात करती हूँ और ये मेरे लिए बहुत आम सी बात है इसमें, क्योंकि मेरे यहाँ पे बच्चे उसी बैकग्राउंड से आता है. सो वो बच्चा वहीं पे वो मतलब उसके लिए मीनिंगलेस हो गया, सारे एफर्ट्स मीनिंगलेस हो गए हैं. या कोई काम बच्चे को दिया जा रहा है या कोई काम दिया बच्चे को जो उस लेवल का है ही नहीं. उसको जो काम दिया जाता है बच्चे को वो उसकी क्रोनोलॉजिकल एज के हिसाब से दिया जाता है, लेकिन जब हम किसी बच्चे को बैठ के इंटरवीन करते हैं तो उसकी मेंटल एज के हिसाब से इंटरवीन करते हैं. सो इसलिए मैंने बोला कि डिजिटल एजुकेशन जो है वो इंक्लूसिव नहीं है. डिजिटल एजुकेशन को इंक्लूसिव होने की बहुत जरूरत है. जैसे बाकी सारे पैनलिस्ट ने भी बोला कि दीक्षा ऐप हो या कोई भी ऐप हो, इवन जो डीओई ने कुछ वीडियोस जो हैं वो तैयार किए हैं हर एक टॉपिक हिसाब से, सब्जेक्ट वाइज, हर एक टॉपिक वाइज, जो कि हमारे यहाँ पे एक आईसीटी लैब चलती है पूरा बाकायदा, जिसमें बच्चे को कैल लैब के नाम से वो चलती है. लेकिन अगर मेरा बच्चा नहीं उसको देख पा रहा है, नहीं उसको सुन पा रहा है, उसको समझ ही नहीं पा रहा है, उसको कॉम्प्रिहेंड ही नहीं कर पा रहा है, तो उस कैल लैब का मेरे लिए वो मेरे बच्चे के लिए वो मीनिंगलेस है और मेरे लिए भी वो मीनिंगलेस है. तो इसीलिए मैंने बोला कि डिजिटल एजुकेशन इंक्लूसिव नहीं है और अपने आप में ही एक्सक्लूजन जो है वो खड़ा कर देती है.
Thank you, Akanksha ma'am. Our next question is from Huma Masood from UNESCO, and she asks that as COVID-19 presents particular challenge for persons and children with disabilities, how would you view the RTE Act 2009 and the RPWD Act in the context of essential services, especially education, to be redesigned and made inclusive? So, who would like to take that question? Maybe Rahul, would you want to answer that question?
Sure, I can take a stab at it. You are able to hear me now, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and see me also. What I will say also sort of picks up on what Akansha ma'am was saying. Under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, Section 16 outlines a bunch of obligations that need for which an endeavor has to be made to sort of take steps to this take the steps enumerated therein. Now, as I recall, the steps that are envisaged there do not actually anticipate, steps relating to assistive technology for the blind or transcription software for the deaf, things like that. It's more on things like Braille, sign language, scribes, and the like. And therefore, in the current circumstances, it becomes even more challenging because that then means that you do not have a very strong legal basis to demand that technology, technological solutions that are being deployed also be accessible. But in terms of sort of how, I'm not sure that I have a clear answer to how essential services, I mean, as best I know, I do not think this sort of a situation is contemplated in either of these laws. So perhaps, there has been some amount of advocacy, as Mr. Ali was saying, in terms of writing letters to the government to get them to make all of this accessible. But as he said, it hasn't really yielded any meaningful results. And sort of one final point that I would make, which is a sort of a side note, but also worth considering, does not relate to education, but also the Arogya Setu app itself is inaccessible, or was at the last time I checked a few days ago, inaccessible to the blind, and a few representations were made about that to the government also. Even in the making of an app that they are now making mandatory, accessibility was not taken into consideration.
Right. Thank you, Rahul. My next question is from SSG Innovates. And the question is that since the role of parents become very important in times like these, can we train parents academically to support children? And also, how far has the personalized follow-up with parents has worked? Is there a reflection feedback from parents to help you better plan for the future? I think Deepti, could you take this question up?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, in special education and at Jai Vakil in particular, the parent is actually an equal partner in the development of the child. When we, as I mentioned before, when we set out to make the videos, the need came from the parent. And the endeavor is to assist the parent as best as we can to conduct these activities with the child. And there is a method put in place wherein we are tracking the response, whether in terms of did they find the video very difficult to follow? Is there anything better we can do? Are the instructions clear enough? What are the other needs of the parents? So all of those things, because as I said initially, this is new to us. So we will be learning through this process, and the parent as a partner working together and collating the feedback that we're getting is something that we are working very strongly on.
Thank you, Deepti. Our next question is from Vinita Tiwari. She asked that in major cities of India, inclusion is only on paper, and practically it's a daydream for parents of autism spectrum disorder kids. How we can make inclusion practically possible for each ASD child who has equal rights? I think, Deepti, would you want to take this question again?
understand completely that for children with autism, this is a tough time. Anyway, they are bound by routines, and the entire routine has become completely haywire. So, like I said, I mean, there needs to be policy changes, there needs to be concerted efforts, there need to be a mindset shift, also a shift in tangible results before we can see children getting included in the true sense of the word. But I do recognize that this time is difficult for children with disability and more so for children with autism.
Right. Another question is from Sony Gill, who's from Bethany Society, Shillong. And Bethany Society was one of the partners who helped us conduct a research in the Northeast. So the question is, can anyone talk briefly about how universal design for learning is an integral part of inclusive education? Who would want to take that question? Akanksha ma'am, would you want to take that?
Okay.
Yeah.
ओके तो अभी लगभग 1 साल पहले एक छोटा सा प्रोजेक्ट था यूनिवर्सल डिजाइन करिकुलम के ऊपर, जिसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा हमने प्राइमरी स्कूल के बच्चों के लिए काम किया था कि उनकी बुक्स को रीडिजाइन किया गया। मैम यहाँ पे मैं फिर से आपसे एक रिक्वेस्ट कर रही हूँ कि बहुत बार जब हम लोगों को पढ़ाना पड़ता है एनसीईआरटी से, क्योंकि हमारे पास एनसीईआरटी ही बुक होती है, हम दूसरी बुक भी रेफर करते हैं प्रोबेबली, लेकिन क्योंकि हमारा बच्चा जो है अल्टीमेटली किसी न किसी एग्जाम के लिए बैठेगा ही एट द एंड ऑफ द सेशन। तो जब अगर हर सेशन के बाद बैठेगा, अगर आप एनसीईआरटी की बुक उठा के देखेंगे तो आपको लगेगा कि मतलब हम लोग उसको समझ नहीं पाते हैं, तो एक CWSN बच्चा उसको कैसे समझ पाएगा। सो एनसीईआरटी में कई बार हम लोगों ने ये मतलब पर्सनल लेवल पे भी हम लोगों ने भी मिलके कई बार ये बात पहुंचाई है कि जो बुक्स हैं एटलीस्ट उनको आप थोड़ा सा सिंप्लीफाई कर दो, थोड़ा सा पिक्टोरियल कर दो। अभी उसमें अगर पिक्टोरियल भी है तो वो पिक्चर आई डोंट नो कौन से जहान की वो लेके आते हैं, आई डोंट नो, पर कुछ लेवल पे अगर हम यूनिवर्सल डिजाइन की बात करते हैं तो हमारे सिलेबस के साथ साथ हमारे जो बुक्स हैं उनको भी रीडिजाइन होने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि हर लेवल पे एक टीचर के पास या एक केयर गिवर के पास, एक स्पेशल एजुकेटर के पास एक लिमिटेड टाइम होता है। उस लिमिटेड टाइम में हमसे अगर मतलब क्योंकि हमारे पास लिमिटेड अगर टाइम है और सेशन अगर हम अभी कोविड की वजह से जो सेशन छोटा हो गया है उसमें हमारे लिए अब वो और भी छोटा हो गया है, उस चीज को बाकी बच्चों के साथ में खड़ा करने के लिए अपने बच्चे को हमें न जाने कितनी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है। जैसा मैंने पहले बोला कि जो भी टीचर दे रहा है बच्चों को काम, हमें वो रीडिजाइन करना पड़ता है। सो व्हाई वी रीडिजाइन? अगर एनसीईआरटी में वो सारी चीजें कुछ सिंप्लीफाई होके आए तो हम उसको बहुत अच्छे तरीके से दे सकते हैं। तो यूनिवर्सल डिजाइन जो है वो बहुत जरूरी है इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन के लिए। अगर हम इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन सच में लाना चाहते हैं तो हमें ये डिजाइन लेके ही आना पड़ेगा। उसके अलावा हमारे पास, मुझे नहीं लगता कि हमारे पास कोई और ऑप्शन है। और एक स्पेशल एजुकेटर आई डोंट थिंक कि अपनी कैपेसिटी से इतना बियॉन्ड जाके काम कर सकता है, क्योंकि उसके पास एक लिमिटेशन है, उसके पास भी एक दायरा है और उसकी भी एक स्पेसिफिक टाइम लिमिट है जॉब की। तो वो उस जॉब की जो टाइम लिमिट है उसमें वो जितना काम कर सकता है वो उससे ज्यादा काम कर रहा है, और रेगुलर टीचर्स भी काम कर रहे हैं। लेकिन जो सामने हमारे पॉलिसी बनाने वाले लोग हैं, एनसीईआरटी में भी लोग बैठे हुए हैं जो कि स्पेशल एजुकेशन से जुड़े हुए हैं, लेकिन आई डोंट नो वहां पे क्या इनिशिएटिव लिए जा रहे हैं। एनसीईआरटी आई डोंट नो कितने सालों से बदला ही नहीं है, उसकी बुक्स बदली नहीं है, तो उसको चेंज होने की जरूरत है।
Next question. Thank you, Akanksha, for answering this question really elaborately. Next question is from Pratiksha from Squadwest NGO, and a question is how we can help the communities through financial and economical help, and they usually work with endosulfan victims. So how can we help them? Arman, would you want to take that question up? You could see the question on your screen as well.
The question, how can we help financially children?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if the context here is education and it is free and compulsory in our country, if the child is going to government school or Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan school, they are supposed to get allowance for transportation per month. Besides that, how one would need, there is no scheme of the government as such. There are scholarship schemes which hardly anybody applies because of multiple gatekeepings in the government. Scholarships are there for students with disabilities. One could explore that for sure. From school only, I think they get, but there are no such schemes which can give money directly to children or their family.
Right. So I think I have another question for you, Arman, and maybe Rahul can also add to it later. This is from SSG Innovates, and there are similar questions from other attendees as well. That if you have to choose between exclusive schools for children with special needs or inclusive education to measure each child's progress, which one would you choose and why? And or maybe a discussion on does one size fits all. So Arman, if you could elaborate on that.
Choice between a special school and a regular school, is that a question?
Right.
It's a tough one, okay? It's one, the concept is of a neighborhood school. You know, there's always, you look for a school which is in a neighborhood for anybody, a student with disability or without disability. You know, I want to highlight something. I'm sure all of you know about the 8th All India School Education Survey. Yeah. You know, the results, this was done in 2016-17, that year, I think so. You know, during that time, it said that about 58,76,000 teachers were there in the country, and only 80,000 of them were received any kind of training on inclusive education. And out of total school in the country, only 10% have handrails. I'm not talking about any other accessible features. Or 4% have labs, and 8% have adapted toilets. And you know, during the period of 2002 to 2009, the number of students with disability decreased, and it was like and 68% of them were orthopedically disabled or locomotor disability students. So I think it's a tough call. Where do you want to send your students? Where one, accessibility itself is an issue. Getting in an admission into such schools remains a challenge. So I think, to my mind, people should have the choice of both. Should be able to go to a regular school, because all children, they should learn to grow together, and you know, that's what is ideal. But there also should be special school to support, or resource rooms in a regular school to support the need of the child, whatever based on the child's disability. He or she should be able to get that support, either by technology, or learn Braille, or to learn by sign language, or whatever it may be. That is very important. That's where the role of special school cannot be negated.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think we should refrain from falling into the trap of adopting a very dogmatic approach about this. Shreya mentioned in the beginning how the Submar Pandey case said that it found it unimaginable how children with disabilities could study in a mainstream school. So I think that it is important to ensure that we do not stigmatize the making of this choice in any way, stigmatize certain choices that are available. The other thing I will say is, you know, I support what Arman says about, Mr. Ali says about adopting an integrated model in terms of ensuring that specialized education that you need because of your disability, of the kind that I did not have access to, as I said in the opening, is provided through, by either having some sort of arrangement between mainstream schools and special schools, or in terms of ensuring that the first few years are spent in a special school and then you can be integrated into a mainstream school.
Right. Thank you so much, Rahul and Arman. And now we are already running out of time. I would like Deepti and Akanksha, if you have any concluding remarks to give, and then maybe we could end the session after that.
I think thank you for this discussion and really enriching. The only thing I want to say is that I think we need a little bit of a paradigm shift, not only in terms of how we view disability, but also tangible action if we want to see our children included in society in the true sense. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last words, Akanksha?
मैं बस यही बोलना चाहूँगी कि जो भी एज अ गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉय जो भी पॉलिसीज आती हैं वो मेरी ड्यूटी है उनको इम्प्लीमेंट करना, लेकिन अभी जो भी चीज़ें आई हैं वो पहले से बहुत बेटर हुई हैं उनसे चीज़ें, एंड आई हैव सीन चेंजेस। जैसे कि राहुल सर ने भी बोला कि वो पेन स्ट्रीम में पढ़े हैं, और जब वो ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट्स का जब वो सेंसिटाइजेशन करने के लिए गए तो उनके पास बहुत ज़्यादा चीज़ें बताने को नहीं थी। वैसे ही एक समय पे मैं भी हुआ करती थी, बट चीज़ें चेंज हुई हैं। हाँ, पर दिस इज स्लो, और इसको मुझे लगता है कि हमें पॉजिटिव रहने की बहुत ज़रूरत है। चीज़ें चेंज होंगी और छोटे छोटे स्टेप से ही बड़े स्टेप्स लिए जाएंगे। So thank you so much.
That's a great note on which to end, Akanksha. Thank you very much to all the panelists and the participants for this engaging discussion. Like I said earlier, a recording of the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll post a link to it on our social media accounts. We really appreciate everyone's time. We're also grateful to the Kotak Mahindra Bank and for supporting our work, and Radio Udaan for being our media partner. Please do write into us on any of the email addresses that we've shared during the course of this talk. Message us on any of our social media accounts if you have any feedback on how the webinar went, what we can do better, as well as any comments on our report. We're also open to any suggestions for future research that we might be able to do in this area, and always looking to collaborate with other like-minded people and organizations. So we're very keen to hear your ideas. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening. And stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.